Keir Starmer, sorry, I mean Keith Starmer. Why did you cover up the Jimmy Savile records? Why did your legal team cover up the Jimmy Savile records? Why did the Crown prosecution and the Met Police cover up the Jimmy Savile records? Why did the Crown prosecution and Met Police cover up the Jimmy Savile records? Keir Starmer, how much did the Tories and the Whigs, Lords and Sirs, and the Zionists pay you to cover up Jimmy Savile? How much did they pay you to cover up Jimmy Savile? Met Police and Crown Prosecution Service, how much did the Tories and the Whigs and the Zionists pay you to cover up the Jimmy Savile records? How much did they pay you? Keith Starmer, how much was you paid to stab Jeremy Corbyn in the back and the front by the Tories and the Whigs and the Zionists to hijack the Labour Party and label Jeremy Corbyn anti-Semitic, despite Jeremy Corbyn having loads of Jewish friends and Jewish relationships? Why did you do that, Keith Starmer? Why did you do that? Is that how you got your serfship? Is that how you got your serfship nomination by the Tories, the Whigs and the Zionists? Did they nominate on your behalf if you hid the Jimmy Savile records? If your legal team hid the Jimmy Savile records? If you hid the Jimmy Savile records when you became Prime Minister? Because you're Prime Minister and you could still release those Jimmy Savile records, couldn't you, Keith Starmer? You could still release those Jimmy Savile records connected to the Tories and the Whigs and the Zionists, the Lords and the Sirs, powerful judges, powerful police, powerful NHS staff, powerful BBC staff. Those Jimmy Savile records probably got swallowed up by the Jeffrey Epstein network. Those Jimmy Savile records probably got swallowed up by the Jeffrey Epstein network. Jeffrey Epstein sell anything and everything globally, legal and illegal. Yeah, Jeffrey Epstein's network was massive, and Keith Starmer, you knew about Peter Mandelson being very corrupt and working with Jeffrey Epstein, sell anything and everything globally, illegal and illegal network, and you still hired Peter Mandelson to go and work with Grab Them by the Pussy Donald Trump. Digital data goes nowhere, Keith Starmer. Digital data goes nowhere. When you're going to investigate Leave EU fraud connected to Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, Dominic Cummings, Aaron Banks, Boris Johnson, Richard Trice, Nigel Farage, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Priti Patel, Boris Johnson, and the Jeffrey Epstein network via Steve Bannon, the Jeffrey Epstein network via Aaron Banks. When are you going to investigate Leave EU fraud, which was massive? When are you going to actually do some real human lawyer, prime minister stuff, Keith Starmer? Or is Keith Starmer also a psychopath, sociopath, and narcissistic personality disorder sufferer, like Richard Trice, Boris Johnson, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Grab Them by the Pussy, Donald Trump, Randy Andy Hansy, Sarah Ferguson, Piers Morgan, Tucker Clarkson, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Michael Knowles, Peter Jordan, Dan Wootton, Darren Grimes, Eamon Holmes? When you're going to do your job, uphold the law, Keith Starmer. When you're going to do your job, uphold the law, Keith Starmer. When you're going to release those Jimmy Savile records, Keith Starmer. When you're going to release those Jimmy Savile records, Keith Starmer. Keith Starmer, when you're going to tell the world that Israel has nukes. Keith Starmer, when you're going to tell the world that Netanyahu and Ben Gvir and others run a torture prison, collecting skin and organs of dead battlefield Palestinians and dead battlefield tortured Palestinians, how they collect skin and organs as trophies. When you're going to tell them the truth, Keith Starmer? When you're going to tell them the truth, Keith Starmer? Keith Starmer, when you're going to tell them about Project Paperclip? Keith Starmer, when you're going to tell them about the Nazi Zionism 1933 coin, medal, Palestine transfer agreement? Keith Starmer, when you're going to tell people about history? Keith Starmer, are you in the pedo club, Keith Starmer? Keith Starmer, are you in the rape club? Keith Starmer, are you in the sexual assault club? Keith Starmer, are you in the politically religious mainstream media corruption stooge club? Are you? Keith Starmer, are you as bad as Nigel Farage and Boris Johnson and Donald Trump grabbed them by the pussy? And Netanyahu? And poo in a tin? Are you a psychopath, sociopath, narcissistic personality disorder, Keith Starmer? Like your mates? Keith Starmer, naughty, naughty. Bad Prime Minister. Hiding the Jimmy Savile records. Hiding the Jimmy Savile records as a lawyer, Crown prosecution, naughty Met Police, naughty, naughty.